On today's Transport Evolved, sneaky practices in Michigan, the bid to be first, and Elon Musk gets the South Park treatment. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 215, believe it or not, of Transport Evolved, recorded on Sunday, October 19th, 2014. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and we're back in the studio. I hope you enjoyed last week's special edition on the road. Thank you very, very much to the wonderful Deb Seymour, aka the Urban Folklorista, for her lovely road trip with me. It's always nice. I really like taking road trips with people in the UK. People think that as a Brit, I don't like road trips, but I do. I like road trips, and I like putting the cameras on and seeing what happens when we go along. And I hope you enjoyed that little trip to the new Tesla store opening. We chatted, obviously, last week about all the news. This week, we're back in the studio. I've got two fantastic guests with me. Before I fade them up, though, one of them still got their speakers on a little bit too loud. And when I fade them up, we might hear some echoes, so let's see if this is going to work now. Joining me live in the studio, or virtually in the studio, all the way from the north of England, the wonderful Faye Sunderland. How are you today, Faye?
I'm good, thank you very much. It's good to be on the show.
First time on the show. We'll do proper introductions in a second. Also joining me from the west coast of the US, where it is early in the morning on a Sunday, the wonderful Mr. Paul Scott. Hello, Paul. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Very good to be here.
Very, very good to have you back. And I think whoever it was, you fixed your speakers now, so it's sounding great. So if I hear feedback, I'll just cut you off. Basically, I'll pull this fader, and then no one will be able to hear you. Simple as that. I am the ultimate power. Faye, you've not been on the show before. You are the hippie in chief at the Green Car website. .co.uk. Tell us about the website.
Well, the website's quite general, quite broad spec. We write about everything from combustion cars to hydrogen cars and everything in between. As long as we feel there's an environmental angle, we'll kind of write about it.
Well, you've been an editor of mine for a while as well, haven't you? Because I wrote for you guys for a while as a columnist, along with the wonderful Robert Llewellyn. And just recently started writing for you guys, but it was great. It was a great ride, and we've done some press launches together as well.
Yeah, we did
recently up a what was it? A mountain somewhere, driving a Volkswagen GTE. That was jolly good fun.
Yeah,
and you are also immortalised by the wonderful skit that Robert and I did on a roundabout in Barcelona. Oh no, we're stuck on roundabout. I thought that I genuinely offended you about that, and then when I actually saw you, it was good fun. Paul, the wonderful Paul Scott, with a cat. Now I've been reading your Facebook posts. I believe this is a recently adopted member of your family.
That's correct. I have been fostering cats and dogs for a rescue group for about 16 years, and I got some kittens in several months ago that I really bonded with and decided to adopt them.
We're all animal people here, aren't we, Faye? Because you're into wildlife and animals, aren't you? Big time.
Very much.
Yeah.
And you ride as well, don't you, Faye?
I used to have my own horse. It's been possibly the greenest form of transport there is.
And probably the funnest as well, actually. So we're going to start today by getting our guests' views on a particular piece of story. Now, Paul, obviously, you one of the founding members of Plug-in America, one of the people who protested against the destruction of the GM EV1 and Toyota RAV4 EV, the Honda EV Plus, the S10 pickup, the Ford Ranger. The list goes on, doesn't it? Even Nissan had a car at that point, a very limited production car at that point. But I'm going to come straight in with a story that is in your neighbourhood. This is a story that the wonderful John Volker over at Green Car Reports covered at the end of last week. We didn't cover it on the site, although we plan to do a cover of his story this coming week. And this is a troubling piece of news, I think, about a change to the California Air Resources Board legislation regarding ZEV credits, zero emission vehicle credits. Now, Paul, perhaps you could give us a bit of a brief rundown on what it is and what the proposed change is.
You know, from what I understand, and I haven't studied it carefully, but I did get the gist of it, is that they're attempting to reduce the credits necessary for the second tier OEMs. These are like Jaguar and some of the smaller companies that were not involved in the original ZEV credits. The top 6 being Nissan, Toyota, Honda, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. So now the second tier is coming into the ZEV credit scheme. And there's been some talk about reducing the number of credits. So I don't know how far down they want to reduce them or eliminate them. I'm trying to get my arms around it myself because I might go and testify next week at the hearings.
Right, right. And the idea is, I mean, this is not people who produce high numbers of vehicles. This is companies who produce and sell kind of medium numbers of vehicles, right? They're just
correct.
So it's not like your Nissans, your General Motors, your Toyotas, your Fords. It's some of the more niche brands, people like Suzuki, people like Land Rover, Jaguar Land Rover, etc., etc. And this legislation, if changed, would mean that instead of having to produce EVs, they might only have to produce plug-in hybrids, which is a very interesting one. We'll maybe revisit that a little later on in the show. I've realised that I've just transposed 2 stories in my head, so we'll come to the one I was going to talk to you about at the top of the show later on in the show. That will all be sorted and fine. Faye, to the UK, and Paul, please feel free to weigh in on this one, because I know, Paul, that you're a solar panel advocate, photovoltaic panel advocate. Faye, you describe yourself as an environmentalist, kind of the hippie from the inside, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've, I think we're all a bit like that in this particular line of work. But the UK, the current administration in the UK is a Conservative coalition with the Conservatives in the majority, and then the Liberal Democrats kind of pushing them up so that they've got the majority they need to lead over the other parties. And in recent years, there's been a disturbing and, I think personally, a dangerous shift away from renewable energy towards things like shale gas, etc., etc. We're seeing more fracking in the UK. We recently had a law, I think, I don't know if it's passed yet, which talked about no longer having rights to stop oil companies and gas companies from drilling under your home. You don't own the land on which your house sits, even if you own the house and you thought you owned the land. But the biggest shock story came through the news this morning, and I was watching the news as I was having breakfast, and I thought, I've got to talk to Faye about this today. Environment Secretary, in fact, from my home county of Norfolk, which makes me feel a bit icky, saying that solar panels are a blight on the landscape, Faye. Solar panels are a blight on the landscape. This is not necessarily, this is Liz Truss, sorry. She was saying, I'll give you the rundown. She told the Mail on Sunday, which is a known tabloid newspaper in the UK. She told the Mail on Sunday that the land could be better used for growing food. And she's basically said that that solar panels are ugly. And she's very concerned that a lot of British land is being taken up with solar panels. We've already got 250 of them, and we've got 10,000 football pitches worth of new solar farms in the pipeline, she said. We import 2/3 of our apples, and using more land for solar panels makes it harder to improve that. So her argument is she wants to use the land for growing food. But she also says she doesn't want solar panels. What's your take on that, Faye?
Well, I find it very ironic to say that solar panels are ugly, and when the government's pursuing the idea of fracking, which is not just visually unappealing. It's, you know, environmentally polluting, and there's the noise pollution as well that comes with fracking, which you don't have with solar panels. I don't understand how anyone could find them offensive compared to something like fracking. I can see a point about land use. That is something we have to carefully consider, but and we should prioritise putting solar panels on roofs. But I do think there's room for it, and we've seen it work very well alongside grazing with livestock. So yeah. I really don't know where she's coming from with that. It just sounds bizarre.
Well, it's really interesting because sort of my personal take on it is that East Anglia is a really interesting place actually, because during the Second World War, East Anglia, which was, you know, used to be, and I suppose a lot of people still think of it as a very bucolic place. It's you know, very pretty, very picturesque. I mean, I as a former musician, the music of Ray Vaughan Williams, I always say, typifies, you know, that East Anglian British countryside feel. It's not the kind of the sweeping hills that you get of Oxfordshire or the south west, but it's quite flat. There's a lot of land. A lot of that land is on marshland, so there is some of that marshland has a restriction on A, what you can do with it, and B, what you can put on it. But it used to be, you know, before the Second World War, lots of hedges, etc., etc. And during the Second World War, after the Second World War, farmers were paid to rip hedgerows up and to you know, go into this very massive industrialised land farming, and it's caused a problem actually. If you drive through Suffolk, which is the county south of Norfolk, where this particular woman is from, if you drive through parts of Suffolk, parts of Cambridgeshire, there are no hedgerows for miles and miles and miles and miles, and people are only just starting to put them back in. And in the winter time, they have to put up these special baffles to stop the snow, because the land's so flat. If it does snow from the, you know, snow comes off the North Sea, and it blows across the land, it causes instant drifts. So actually, I could see solar panels working in that part of the world, and that's the only really the part of the world that I'm thinking she really has a right to speak about. Paul, what do you make of all of this? You know,
it's very similar to what's being said already. You know, solar panels are necessary because they provide clean, renewable energy for decades. And they're replacing filthy coal and natural gas energy, and in some places, nuclear energy. So if somebody has a problem with the aesthetics, that's a personal issue and should not be written into policy. The aesthetics of a coal plant are pretty nasty. The aesthetics of mountaintop removal in Appalachia here are pretty nasty. So I'm concerned that this person who has problems with solar energy is using dirty electricity. So if she's willing to forego the use of all dirty electricity, then I'll listen to what she has to say. But until and unless she does that, then just ignore her.
And it's a big challenge, I think, in the UK, because we're a small country, we're a growing country, we're quite densely populated. There is this rush from North Sea oil and gas. There is a lot of money in the politics, and we'll come to maybe to the story of political interests later on, because there is another story that we should talk about today that brings that up. But it is very sad to see. It really is. All right. Let's move on to transportation. I think, you know, I included that story because it's energy, you know, and we here talk about plug-in cars amongst other future transportation, and I think it makes sense to talk about where the fuel comes from as well. All right, but this one is about a car, BMW, the BMW i3 Rex. Faye, have you driven that car yet?
It's not one I've driven now.
No. I'm gonna say this now for the record, and maybe I shouldn't. Should I say anything? Yes, I'm going to. BMW told me a couple of weeks ago that no, I'm not going to get any press cars. They don't consider Transport Evolved worthy of press cars, essentially. So BMW has categorically said no, you're not going to get any press cars, and which is sad, really. So I'm not going to get to test it anyway. I have driven both the Rex and the EV at the launch, but it was a very short launch. Didn't really get much time in the car, and that's one of the frustrating things. You know, when car companies go, yeah, you've driven the car for half an hour.
Yeah.
Haven't you made your mind up? And you go, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. Anyway, that's why we haven't had any BMW i3 and BMW i8 reviews. But anyway, the BMW i3, back in, I think it was November last year, Faye, the Telegraph got their hands on it. They drove it up a section of the I would say the M20 in the south of England, up a steep hill in range extended mode. And they discovered that on the motorway at 70 miles an hour in range extended mode, after the battery pack had got flat, the tiny 650cc gasoline engine just couldn't keep up. And you ended up in a situation where the car ran out of oomph. That's the only way of putting it. Paul, you don't say that in the States, do you? You don't say oomph in the States, do you? What would you say?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Oh, you'd say oomph.
It's appropriate.
So last year, we picked that story up from the Telegraph, got a lot of criticism from BMW i3 Rex owners for doing so. People going, oh, well, they weren't using it properly. Over here in Europe, once the Rex's state of charge drops below, I think it's either 60 or 70%, you can opt to turn the range extended engine on, which obviously gives you more power earlier on. But in the States, because of CARB regulation, in order to get the BMW i3 Rex classed as a ULEV, that's not a ULEV anymore, it's something else, isn't it? It's Partial Zero Technology Advanced Vehicle, Paul. I can never remember the acronym.
Yeah, that's PTZEV, I think.
That's it, PTZEV. In order to get it to classify as that, BMW had to essentially say, we're not going to turn the gasoline range extended engine on until it gets to 6%. So, Consumer Reports, the very, very well-known institution, it's been around for 70 plus years in the US. They buy all their cars from dealerships. They drive them as anybody would. One of their test drivers was out in the BMW i3 Rex that belonged to Consumer Reports, was going up a steep hill after the battery pack had run low, tried to overtake a lorry and found out that the car didn't have the oomph it needed. Now, obviously, I think BMW are paying more attention to Consumer Reports. BMW have now admitted there's a problem. BMW is working on a solution. Do we think that this is a dangerous place for an EV to be in, a range extended EV? I mean, in EV mode, it works fine. It's just that when the gasoline engine kicks in, it's a bit sluggish. Faye, would you advise people to stick clear of that car in that case?
I mean, it is worrying. I mean, you expect that if you're driving in on motorway, highway conditions, that the car is going to be able to keep the speed going, whatever speed you want it to go, especially if you've got a range extender and you think you don't have to worry particularly about the range. So it is deeply worrying. If it's not easy for people to use, then that's really concerning, really.
And do you think, Paul, that this is a victim of the regulations, of BMW trying too desperately to put this car in the regulations when it maybe shouldn't have been?
It clearly is. And, you got to fault CARB to some degree because their restrictions are fairly onerous, I think. I don't know the technical reasons why they can't get any more power. But if CARB demands that they rework the car or make the car a certain way, then essentially BMW had to do that. I think part of the fault does lie then with CARB, and hopefully the BMW engineers can figure out a workaround that will still satisfy CARB and give the power necessary to their customers. Because I'd hate to see an EV be criticized as being too weak. That's one of the strengths that we have, is we've got a lot of power in these cars. Right. And the fault lies mostly with CARB and with how they were forced to rework the car.
You see, this is the interesting thing, because obviously the Chevy Volt 1.4 litre gasoline range extended engine, even the Volt was built with what Chevy calls a mountain mode, which is when you're going up mountain passes. And it says in the manual, if you're going up mountain passes, please press the mountain mode. It charges up the battery pack so that it can go over the mountain pass. Now, personally, I've got a Chevy Volt, as a disclaimer. I've never been in that position where I've gone, oh, I really wish I had more power. But I've tried driving in both modes and it's been fine. The i3 Rex, meanwhile, has a tiny, and I do mean tiny, I think it's a 650cc gasoline engine, which is essentially a motorbike engine or a scooter engine. So it's, it's no real surprise that a car that small would have trouble going up a hill. I don't know, maybe not. All right, let's move on. One final question from that, Paul. Do you think that this means that the i3 Rex is going to have to come off the CARB list?
Oh, I hope not. It's selling quite well here. I see, yesterday I saw 3 of them inside a half an hour on the streets here in Santa Monica, and they're selling quite well. I don't want them to change anything that will harm the sales. People seem to like them. I haven't heard of this problem from anybody yet, although I'm sure it's going to happen. It's a rare occurrence. It's not something that I would think would prevent many people from buying the car, because its acceleration at low end is extremely good. A lot about the car is very good. So it's a rare occurrence when something like this would happen, and maybe there'll be a workaround eventually.
Maybe another thing here to bear in mind is the fact that we've got so used, as someone was saying in the chat, we've got so used to cars having a function for everything that we forget that this car is ostensibly a city car. You know, it's built as a city car. The range extender is designed to be used in cities. Unless you happen to live in Colorado, you're probably not going to have huge amounts of, or maybe San Francisco, you're not going to have huge amounts of hills to climb in your city or around your city. And even then, it's going to be fairly small stuff.
Yeah, and you need a lot of power in the streets of San Francisco. You just need to get up the hill. I mean, you know, it's going to have more than enough power to do that. Yeah. You can't race up those hills anyway. Traffic prevents it.
No, and in fact, if you do, there's one particular street, I can't remember the name of it, that I was riding a motorbike along once. I was test driving a motorbike, and the street just literally, I've never seen. I mean, as a Brit, we're used to our hills gradually going down, but it was a stoplight. The other side of the stoplight, the road was going straight, and then suddenly it was down at a 45-degree angle. And I don't know how cars don't bottom out. All right, let's move on to our final story of the segment. Paul, RVs, loved in America?
I missed the first part of that.
RVs, recreational vehicles.
Yeah, they're big here. We've got the baby boomers, you know, the group born after World War II, have been buying them by the hundreds of thousands, and they're huge land yachts, highly inefficient, and I don't care for them very much.
But here in the UK, Faye, we are getting, aren't we, some RVs. We're getting more and more American style RVs, but in the UK, we've traditionally had the camper van, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, they're still, I think, still a bit of a niche, but those that love them really love them.
Oh, I don't know, Paul, because I know obviously the VW microbus was very popular in America, but it was more of a surfer vehicle than it was a vehicle that you would camp in. But over here, kind of the same vehicle was used primarily as the basis for camper vans, where you have a stove, you'd have a couple of beds, you'd seating for a couple of people.
Yeah, so the reason we have these giant land yachts here is because our gasoline prices were historically quite low and are still very low. As long as you don't include the externalities of oil in the price of gasoline, then you typically get very large, inefficient vehicles plying your roads. And that's what we've got. People don't need those things, but as long as it's cheap enough to drive them around, they'll carry as much stuff as they can. Because they're not they don't get the right price signals from their fuel source.
And here, obviously, it's quite expensive, isn't it, to even have a small camper van, isn't it, Faye? I mean, those camper vans probably 20 miles per gallon, which is, well, I don't even want to think about what the value of that is in the UK. And of course, in Europe, camper vans, again, very, very popular. But camper van for Faye, your first ever camper van, Faye, maybe.
Yeah.
When you're rich and famous, because I think it retails for about 35,000. It starts at about 35,000. Take Nissan's ENV200, which is the all-electric van based on the Nissan Leaf. And Paul, you used to sell the Nissan Leaf at downtown Los Angeles, Nissan downtown Los Angeles, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And I had several customers desperately wanting this NV200 when it came out. Unfortunately, they're not available here yet. I know that they're testing them somewhere here in the States.
Oregon, yeah, Oregon.
Oregon, that's right. But we haven't had any on sale yet. And I know a lot of people are desperate to get one.
Well, I've driven one and I've said I would love one in the States because I think it's lovely. My partner thinks it's horrible, but then she doesn't like vans. And she's a child, she's a Gen Xer. She grew up, you know, in the 80s and 90s. So she's got that American memory of the day van and the long road trip. No, thank you. But this is a company from Derby in the UK, Faye, which is not too far from you, is it? Not really. No, they've taken Nissan ENV200, which is available here, of course, as a commercial vehicle. And this is the interesting thing. They've taken the commercial vehicle and they've turned it into a camper van. So they put a roof on it, a pop-up roof like you have in a camper van. They've added side windows. They've added seating in the rear. They've added the kitchen sink, quite literally, and the gas stove and the electric refrigerator. And this vehicle will drive 70-ish miles. I mean, they say 100, but I think 70 to 80 is realistic. You can rapid charge it from a DC CHAdeMO quick charging station, just like you can the Leaf or the ENV200, the standard ENV200. You can have a 3 kilowatt or a 6 kilowatt charger. Of course, we've got the electric highway in the UK, so you can drive literally from one side of the UK to the other for free at the moment using rapid chargers. This is the perfect eco-friendly camper van, isn't it, guys? What do you think, Faye?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as long as people are use the electric highway, then you know it is that electric vehicle that will get you up to Scotland for the once a year holiday.
Yes.
That,
yeah.
People are complaining about.
And I can see it being very popular, Paul, in California, should it ever come over.
Oh, I think you're right. We're going to need a slightly longer range, I think, and certainly our CHAdeMO stations are not as common as yours. We've got quite a few around the LA area, quite a few around San Francisco, but linking the two and getting up into the mountains, we're still needing more of those, but they're coming very quickly. And once we have a robust charging infrastructure, a 50 kilowatt or higher,
right,
these sorts of vans will be very popular.
And I can see lots of people doing this. I can see lots of people going, okay, let's go for a holiday. Let's take the ENV200. And I know people in the UK who actually use their camper vans during the week as regular vehicles. So maybe this would be something as well in the UK and in Europe, of course. Let's not forget. The name of the company, in case anyone's interested, is Hillside Leisure. And the vehicle is called the Dalbury E. They already do a gasoline version because the NV200 is available as a gasoline vehicle as well. So there are sort of several different versions. Time now for a quick ad break, and I've just realised there's a little blip at the top of my just there. I don't know what that is. I don't know. It's just an aberration on the screen. I'll get my cleaner out and clean it off. You can't see any of this if you're listening to the audio. Don't worry, I screwed up my green screen. If you are watching this show live and you want to help us keep the show on the road, as it were, you can do so by going to www.transportevolved.com, and on the right-hand side of our page there, you'll see a donate button, and the donate button allows you to make a monthly subscription to Transport Evolved. Now, there are several different levels. In fact, I'll read them off for you. You can have a level 1, which Americans will recognise as the 110 volt outlet. Level 2, there's a rapid charge, and then there's a supercharger. And those different levels, excuse me, I've got hiccups. Those different levels allow you to make a monthly subscription using PayPal to ensure that we can keep the show on the road. And quite a lot of you now do that, and I'm very grateful that you do that, because I think just about now we've got enough people subscribing and donating on a monthly basis that is paying for all of our server bandwidth, which is good because we make this product available, the product being the show and the news. I don't believe in paywalls. The paywall will be the last thing I do before giving up this site forever. I can go on the record and say that. I think information should be free. And if you like the information, you should consider contributing for it. So there you go. Please do make a donation. You can also do a donation using Bitcoin. The link is there as well. And if you want to make a one-off donation, while that isn't listed, do get in touch and we can show you how to do that. So thank you very much for your kind support of the show. I've got the wonderful Faye Sunderland from the Green Car website with me, and also Paul Scott from Plug in America. Now, Paul, I know we didn't really talk about this at the head of the show, but this time last year, you were due to meet with the Prez, weren't you, Mr. Barack Obama?
Well, back in June, so it's been about a year and a half now. Yeah, I had offered to spend $32,400 in order to go to a fundraiser and be part of only 25 people to go into a room for an hour with the president to speak off the record about anything that I liked. And because I had written an op-ed talking about this prior to the event, and the reason I wrote the op-ed is I wanted to get my message out to a much broader audience than just the president, on the chance that maybe he didn't take my advice. And when the op-ed hit, it got wide circulation throughout the country and apparently struck a nerve. There were over 900 comments on the Autoblog Green site within 24 hours. So that gives you some indication of what it did. At any rate, the president was going through some problems with the IRS and Benghazi. The Republicans were hammering them on that, and they saw this as another distraction because the right wing had picked it up and ran with it with the understanding that, hey, the president is a whore. You have to spend money to go see him, and which is kind of crazy since money is prevalent throughout the political process here in the States. So at any rate, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, which got the money, called or sent to me an email saying that I could not come to the event after all and meet the president, and they gave me my money back.
And that became the start of My Lunch with Obama, which is a film, isn't it, that's coming out?
Yes, it's a documentary being shot. Currently, we shot some last week, and we're shooting some more next week, and the editing process will start shortly after that.
Okay, cool. Well, I meant to bring that up at the top of the show, and I didn't, so I thought I'd be a good place to bring it in now. All right, sure. Well, keep us up to date with that, because I'd love to see the trailers when they come out. All right, on to part two. And we're talking now about Mr. Elon Musk and his his battery swap. I mean, the fact that Elon Musk loves creating attention. Okay. So talked to Automotive News last week, at the end of last week, concerning the Tesla D, i.e. the 60D, the 85D and the P85D, and obviously the autonomous drive stuff. And at the bottom of that article, Automotive News said, and by the way, Elon Musk says the first battery swap station will be live somewhere along the corridor between San Francisco and LA in a couple of months' time, i.e. before the end of the year. Now, the battery swap was first demoed, Paul, actually, interestingly, about the same time that you were supposed to have your lunch with President Obama.
Yeah, I got to go to the launch event at the Tesla headquarters here in Los Angeles and watch the battery swapping. It was quite exciting, and I thought a political coup for Elon to have demonstrated this. And the reason he did so, apparently it was built into the design of the car from the very beginning and was just kept secret. CARB will give you more credits if you can demonstrate refueling inside of 5 minutes. And so that's why it was done. I don't think the intent was to actually build these stations just to demonstrate it for CARB to get the extra credits. But now it does appear that they're going to be building one. And it might be because they're just getting so many Teslas on the road that the quick chargers are unable to keep up the demand.
You see, I'm glad that you said that, Paul, because that is exactly the reason why I think it's happening. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I mean, Tesla said earlier this year, Elon Musk said of this that, well, Tesla's had other priorities, obviously the Gigafactory, the X, obviously the S. Now we know that the S and the autonomous drive, etc., and that battery swap wasn't really at the top of the priority. But the other thing to bear in mind is that this battery swap technology is expensive. The units to put this all together is expensive. I'm sure Tesla will figure out a way of doing it efficiently and cheaply, and high quality, obviously. But I think you're right. I think the number of people who are using that corridor now with the Tesla Model S, the number of people is so high that the supercharging network cannot keep up. And I know here in the UK, we're already starting, aren't we, here to hear, Faye, about people who are going to superchargers and discovering that if I'm at a supercharger and somebody else is at a supercharger and we're both trying to charge, the power that we draw drops, we take longer. It's already starting, isn't it?
It is, and yeah, and obviously still at the moment we've got the problem of there just not being that many, especially since the first few have all been in London. So anyone outside of London is going to be less interested in them anyway.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've got, I think there's about 7 now in the London area, 7 different sites in the London area, I think, maybe a few less. There's one now up in Birmingham. I think there's one in Scotland now. I think there's one in Manchester coming. I know there's one in Bristol coming, etc., etc. So, but I think it's just the queues. Now, that's a bit disingenuous, isn't it, Paul, in some ways? Because if that is the case, Tesla has always said we will charge for the battery swap facility. So supercharging will be free. If you want to supercharge, it will always be free for the life of the car. We're never going to charge you, but you will have to pay for the battery swap, won't you? Unless they change it.
Yeah, I love the way he did it. He said, because, how would they price it? And so what they came up with was fairly ingenious. They will charge you the equivalent of 15 gallons of gas at the local price. So if you're on the East Coast, you might have one price. On the West Coast, you might have a different price. In the middle, a third price. So it'll vary depending on where you are. So I thought that was pretty good. You can be on your way inside of 3 minutes, because he did 2 battery swaps in the time it took to fill an Audi's gas tank. So I think they were right around 2 minutes each. So in under 3 minutes, you can be on your way and you'll have paid the equivalent of 15 gallons of gas. So I thought that was a pretty ingenious way to price it.
It is a very interesting way. Of course, you do have to return your own battery. You have to return to pick your own battery up later on, or you have surcharges. I think that's how it works.
I'm not sure that you have to, because it might be you're doing a one-way trip. But they will be able to track the battery pack that you have, regardless of whether you return it or you do a battery swap at another location and get a third battery. These sorts of scenarios could happen in the future if we have multiple battery swap stations. People are traveling all over. So I don't know that it matters if you get your own battery back, because Tesla, their warranties and tracking of everything to do with that car will guarantee that they will warranty the car itself.
Yeah, I think now that their warranties changed, that might be the case. I know initially they were talking about you had to try and get your own battery pack back. But I want to see this succeed. I think personally I would probably just wait unless I'm in a hurry. But then I've been driving a Nissan Leaf for the past 4 years. And my Nissan Leaf, it is stop every 45 minutes to an hour to charge. And that's just the way it is. And I've got used to it. All right. Excuse me. I don't know where this is all coming from. Staying with California for a second. I want to talk now about Toyota and Volkswagen, who have been auctioning off or raffling off various cars this week. Now, I don't know which one you want to tackle first. Let's tackle the hydrogen fuel cell. So Toyota said this week it was going to raffle off tickets for a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. If you want to own a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, when it comes to the market next year, you can buy a $100 raffle ticket if you live in California, or you can buy 6 raffle tickets for $500, and you'll be entered into an award ceremony, a prize fund to win with a chance of winning a fuel cell vehicle that I'm going to call it the Toyota Mirai. I know it's not officially yet, but I think that's what it's going to be called. The prize ceremony is taking place tonight, Paul. I think the award ceremony. It's something to do with Hollywood. It's some environmental media association shindig.
Yeah, I haven't been invited to this one, so probably not going to go. But it's interesting that they're going to be raffling off a fuel cell vehicle, because they'll be guaranteed at least one sale that way.
Well, this is the thing. If you look at the Bidding for Good website, I'm going to look for it now because I was looking at it earlier on this week. Bidding has now closed. Now, this is the interesting thing. Would you guys care to guess? I've got my laptop here with the figures on it. Bidding has now closed And this is through the EMA, the Environmental Media Association, big shindig award ceremony tonight in LA. They originally had just under 1,000 tickets remaining. How many do you think they actually sold, Faye?
I'm thinking probably only about 300, because I looked on Friday and it was about 170.
Paul, how many do you think have been sold?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if over 100 people put down that kind of money.
$100. Well, it turns out that 267 tickets have been sold. Now, if that's $100 each, Toyota's lost its shirt on that car, hasn't it? I did the math, and it was about $90,000. You know, if all the tickets had been sold, it would have been about $90,000, which would have been to a profit of $20,000 to go to the EMA. They didn't break even. They haven't broken anywhere near even. And the award ceremony's tonight. They're going to announce the winner tonight. You have to be a Californian resident, and you have to live within within distance of a refueling station. Toyota's really going to lose its shirt on this car, isn't it, Faye?
Yeah, unfortunately. My brother's currently living in California. I've been encouraging him to buy a ticket because I think the odds are quite good. If only less than 300 have sold, he's got a good chance of getting a car for $100.
I was looking. I was looking actually. The award ceremony is not tonight. It's on the 24th. But bidding changed, ended today. They ran it for 10 days. So in 10 days, they managed to convince just under 300 people to get a ticket. 267 people, which is not very good. Talking about rentals, tickets, raffles, that kind of thing, charity, whatnot. Volkswagen is auctioning off its e-Golf. Its very first e-Golf to come into the US. Now, Paul, there is at least some precedent with this because back in 2010, Chevrolet auctioned off the second mass-produced, the second off the production line of the Chevy Volt. The first one went to the Chevy Museum. The second one was put in an auction for a local charity in Michigan. It sold, didn't it, for several $100,000.
It did really well because the demand at that time was unmet. We had huge demand for plug-in cars, and both GM and Nissan were stepping up to join Tesla and actually getting these cars on the market. So the demand was extremely high, and the excitement level was extremely high. The reason, if you want to contrast the e-Golf with the Toyota, the e-Golf is going to generate some excitement, not as much as the original Leaf. Or the Volt probably, but still, it's a very viable car. It's very nice. I haven't driven it yet. I saw one at our National Plug-in Week event at UCLA, and it's a very nice looking car. I suspect it's going to do quite well. So I think they're going to do well with their auction as opposed to Toyota, who has taken a multi-billion-dollar bet on fuel cells, and now's a good time to sell your Toyota stock because of that.
There you go. You heard it from Paul. I'm not taking any, I'm not taking any responsibility for that. But I secretly agree. I think the e-Golf is a great car. I've driven one. It's a car that I would personally consider buying. And I always come away from a review car with that question: would I actually buy one? And yes, I probably would buy an e-Golf. I thought it was a very good car. I had it for a week. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film a review. My sister was ill in hospital, so my week of normally I get a review car, I drive it lots, and then I film a review. But that week I got the car. It didn't do much. I didn't really get to film a review, which is the same as when I had the Tesla Model S recently as well, because family members were ill. I just didn't get time with the car. But Faye, the e-Golf has already pretty much broken even, hasn't it? Last time I checked, it was $30-something thousand. The list price is $35,000.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Golf has always been massively popular, so it's always going to be interesting to see the battery version. And I was really surprised how well Volkswagen have gone into doing electric vehicles, because they sort of seemed a bit half-hearted about it. But yeah, it's a brilliant electric car.
It is.
Yeah. It's something to worry Nissan with, really.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, this with the CCS, with no CCS with the CCS rather than CHAdeMO, there's not quite the compatibility that perhaps there might be. But I still think it's a very good car. I think it's very positive, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. All right, now this is the another story that I forgot to sort of add at the top of the show, and this is one about Tesla. Now, Tesla being defeated in Michigan by another bill that bans direct-to-customer sales, Paul. This is yet another challenge. This is kind of an ongoing battle that's been raging for 3 years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's embarrassing to the dealers and the OEMs they represent. Think about this. You know, you're talking about the car dealers in the U.S. typically are owned by Republicans, right-wing, conservative, market-based people who are constantly, you know, crying about government intervention in private enterprise. And here they are crying to their legislatures, whining about this upstart American company who just a couple of years ago they were laughing at. And now that upstart company has a product that's better than any automobile that's ever existed. And it's competing quite well with these dealers' products. And instead of coming to market with a product that will compete, you know, the American way, they're going to their legislatures and asking for protection from this better product. They should be ashamed of themselves, and the fact that they're not just shows how hypocritical they really are.
Yeah, well, this is HB 5606. It was a Michigan House bill in the Michigan House, and it was voted on back at the beginning of October. It's due to be signed by the governor of Michigan. It hasn't been signed yet. It will be signed. It needs to be signed by October 21st, so by Tuesday, in order to pass into law. But very late on Thursday last week, Tesla published a blog in which it highlighted that the legislator who altered the bill at the very last minute before it went into vote, State Senator Joe Hume, has received campaign funds from the Michigan Automobile Dealers Association. And interestingly, his wife also lobbies for the Michigan Automobile Dealers Association. He was the one who was involved in modifying the text of the bill at the last minute before it voted. Now means that Tesla cannot open any new stores in Michigan, cannot sell direct to customers. This is protectionism. It's overt protectionism, and a clear contradiction between one's duty as an elected official and one's duty as a business person, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it kind of stings because, you know, I was trying to donate money to a political process so I could have a brief meeting of 2 minutes with the president, and I got castigated for it by the right. And here they are doing the exact same thing out in the open. They're not even trying to hide it. They're hypocrites to the core. They should be ashamed of themselves. And the fact that they're not just shows you what kind of people they are. Yeah, this is blatant, and it'll get thrown out. Tesla's going to win in the end, and all these dinosaur dealerships are going to go away.
Now, Faye, this is something that we think is probably going to go all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, this is going to go, I think, all that way. Partly because, the history of the auto dealer associations, of dealer protection, it's gone the way of the dodo, really. It really has. And, you know, there are certain things that are in... I read an article this week about a little-known clause in most automobile dealer contracts between the automaker and the dealer, which means that the automaker, not the dealer, gets final refusal and final say should the owner of the dealership decide they want to sell, as to who that franchise goes to, essentially. So this can't carry on, can it, Faye? I mean, we don't have this in the UK.
Well, I imagine that one of the problems is going to be that people in Michigan who want the Tesla are going to protest. that they can't get their hands on one without going elsewhere. I think that, you know, you can't keep a good idea down, and I think that Tesla will ultimately triumph over this. I can't really see it spreading from state to state. I mean, they've beaten off attempts like this before. I hope it won't last long.
Well, I mean, we've also had this situation, haven't we, Paul, where I mean, we saw it in Arizona and in other states. People would actually effectively become Tesla runners. You know, they'd drive to a different part of the country. They'd get their car. They'd order it, or they'd sign the finance in a different state. Then they'd drive it over the border, and as long as they didn't buy it brand new, or etc., etc., all these loopholes that people found or figured out. And Tesla themselves, you know, they, instead of calling the Tesla stores, the Michigan Tesla store will now become a Tesla gallery.
Yeah. This happened in Iowa just a couple of weeks ago. The Tesla was holding just a test drive over a weekend, and the dealers got wind of it and ordered it stopped. They were just giving test drives. They weren't selling the car or anything. And these dealers were so scared that they might lose some business to Tesla that they had the police go in and stop them. This is how bad it's gotten here. And, you know, I can't emphasize enough how embarrassing it must be to be one of these dealers having to do this. But in fact, they will, and they are. And I don't know if it'll go all the way to the Supreme Court. It may be changed state by state, because a lot of the legislators are embarrassed by it too, and you will get pushback. Tesla has a great product, and when their Model 3 comes out and the masses can afford this car and want to buy it, and they find out from their state that they can't, you'll see some pretty big pushback from the people then.
I just cannot wait to see what happens next. I think that's going to be the next. Well, it has to be the next story of the session, really, doesn't it? All right, let's move on then. This is finally for part 2, and then we'll move on to the final stories for part 3. Part 2, final story. GM has finally started to talk, at least a little bit, about the plans that it has for its next generation EV. Now, right now, the Chevy Spark EV is the only car that you can get really in the US that is a pure EV from Chevy. Obviously, GM used to do the EV one. Now they do the Chevy Spark. They do the Volt as well. The Chevy Spark is very, very limited production. It's a compliance car, despite what Chevy will tell you. But we've got the new Volt coming at the 2015 North American International Auto Show in Detroit. And prospectively, the following year, we're going to see an all-electric Sonic, which will replace the Spark. So that they'll stop making the Spark EV. They'll start making a Sonic EV based on the next generation Sonic platform. And this is the interesting bit, Faye. It might be sold in Europe, says our friends over at Green Car Reports, as an Opel Corsa or a Vauxhall Corsa. Now, I'm not convinced about that, because the Opel Corsa is a different platform. And it's recently just been relaunched, hasn't it? New generation in the UK.
Well, yeah, and although, to be fair, you know, that is a problem that GM are going to face in Europe, is that the Chevrolet brand is going. With it, will be the end of the Ampere in Europe. So they really need an electric model to be able to meet the European emissions regulations. So, I mean, possibly they might do it as a standalone thing, and maybe use some of the battery technology from the Sonic, but I think it would have to be done quite separately. But I think it's possible. They are going to have to come up with something.
Yeah. And Paul, in the States, 200-mile EV based on a Sonic, do you think people would buy it?
I do, especially at the price point I heard. I heard they were shooting for $30,000. And if they can hit that price point, they'll sell a lot of these cars, especially if it has fast charging capability, because a $30,000 200-mile car with fast charge can get you pretty much anywhere once the fast charge network is built out, and that's coming.
I'm dubious that they will be able to compete against Tesla. That's my biggest concern, and which ties into another part of the story involving Cadillac, the Cadillac ELR. Obviously, a second generation car is coming, but we also know that the Cadillac ELR will be joined by some other plug-in hybrid models, and we know that Cadillac also is talking about a 200-mile EV. But Cadillac's really struggled to get the whole plug-in car thing, hasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I think their demographic just was a little bit gun shy of plug-in cars. Part of it is Cadillac tends to sell to somewhat more conservative people, and Fox News has essentially taken a lot of those people off the market by denigrating plug-in cars. But I want to maybe disagree slightly that Tesla is going to dominate that market. Tesla will dominate in terms of the Model 3. But first of all, they've got to hit the 35,000 price point. If they hit that 40, it's going to take quite a bit of the market away. Still good, millions, but not tens of millions. But their ability to manufacture fast enough to satisfy is where I think it leaves the door open for people like GM to come in. If they can come in, if GM comes in before the Model 3 and has a $30,000 200-mile range car, even though it's not a Tesla, it will sell a lot. There's a lot of room in there. We're talking about tens of millions of Americans who can afford that car. And as we get more and more charge stations out there, more and more EVs out there, and now you've got this 200-mile range car, it'll take off, I think, pretty well.
Okay, be interesting to see. I'll be interested to see whether that will happen. I'm still dubious, but I hear where you're coming from. Let's have another ad break, final ad break of the show. If you want to support Transport Evolved, you want to have one of these, which is a Transport Evolved logoed t-shirt. You've seen them, haven't you, Faye?
Yes.
I wear them to all the events now. It's become my unofficial uniform. Interestingly, it's funny because if I go around an event wearing this and the Transport Evolved hoodie, sometimes people's reaction changes than if I go around wearing nice clothes. Not to say that these aren't nice clothes, but you know what I mean. This is like a uniform, whereas if I going out for a dinner for the evening, then I'll put something different on. And but sometimes we turn up at events now we're wearing these, and that you can see the press team kind of give you a strange look, realize why you're wearing it, and then that evening when you come down in your nice evening wear, they look at you and go, "Oh, you do have nice clothes." Anyway, if you want to support Transport Evolved and you want to have some Transport Evolved swag with their logo on, very, very nicely designed logo. It's a little T with a wheel with an E round it, and it's a T and an E in the shape of a steering wheel, which let's face it, in 5 years' time, no one will understand it because we'll all be having self-driving cars. But for now, if you want Transport Evolved swag, go to www.transportevolved.com/shop, and you can buy any number of Transport Evolved apparel. You can have a cup, you can have an iPhone holder, you can have a baby grow, you can have a hat, you can have a t-shirt and a sweater or a varsity jacket, and any of those items. If you buy any of those and you get them sent to you through the usual method, you'll be able to wear them to events and tell everybody about Transport Evolved, but we also, of course, get a kickback. It's just a way of helping spread the word about Transport Evolved and also giving you some Transport Evolved swag. So do consider buying, and thank you if you'd have. Back to part 3 of the show, or starting with part 3 of the show. We're now going to go to France, Faye, French automaker Renault. Now, do you like the Renault electric cars? We've got the Renault ZE, the Fluence ZE, which no longer really is made anymore, apart from being made in, I think it's still made in South Korea as the Samsung SM3, which has a chameleon charger, which is so unfair because the European one doesn't. The Zoe, which is the little 5-seat hatchback. The Kangoo, which is jolly good fun, their little MPV type thing, and also a van. And then you have the Twizy, which I know you like. You like the Twizy, don't you? Your Twizy is your favourite. But when you buy a Renault electric car, there's a difference, isn't there, Faye? Yeah,
with the battery lease.
And that's unusual, isn't it? No other automaker, although other automakers in Europe offer battery leases, Renault is the only company that to this point has said, if you buy one of our cars, you must lease the battery. Not you have a choice, but you must.
Yeah. Well, I can understand why they're now taking a view, Tony, on that. Although I don't think it's a bad idea. I think I'm surprised at how consumers react to that idea, because I think the way you can look at it, if you're unsure of the battery technology because it's relatively new, well, it's not your problem, it's Renault's. So, you know, in that sense, it's a security thing. But I think people are used to choosing whether to buy or to lease a vehicle. They're not used to this idea of doing a bit of both. And I think it's caused a lot of confusion with customers as to whether it's a good idea or not. So I think I mean, it's not really a surprise. You know, it's Nissan were doing the same thing with the Leaf, of giving consumers a choice to buy outright or to lease the battery.
And it's only something that's happened recently, though, isn't it? I mean, in Europe, the Renault offer obviously that you have to lease the battery. Nissan offer a choice. You can buy the car outright with the battery pack, or you can buy the car and then lease the battery pack. The same is true of Daimler for the Smart for 2 ED. And I think Volkswagen are doing the same thing with the e-Golf and the e-Up. Same thing. You can buy the car and the battery pack, or you could buy the car and lease the battery pack. Paul, you used to sell cars. Can you imagine explaining battery leases to customers in the US? I don't think there's any US companies that are doing battery leasing at the moment. Do you think it would be ever take on over there?
I hesitate to say never. I think fleet purposes, for fleets, it's probably a good idea, and the fleet people would easily understand the leasing arrangement. All they're going to look at is what's it going to cost me, what's the bottom line after 3 years. And I think for fleets, it's probably a good idea and should be considered. But for the average American consumer, probably not. I sure wouldn't want to have to explain the mechanism to a prospective buyer or lessee. I had enough trouble convincing people sometimes to do the lease, because a lot of people here never lease and they're afraid of them. But the way it was structured with Nissan, it was probably the better deal to do a lease, especially now with the longer range cars coming out in 2 or 3 years. Instead of buying and owning one, better to lease and then buy and own the longer range car. So yeah, leasing a battery, it has some benefits. I see them, but the complexities probably outweigh the benefits.
And I mean, but this is the interesting part of the story, because obviously Renault traditionally only lease. Now they're saying we're going to actually start selling them to you, and that's the interesting thing. Now, do you think that means that battery leasing is a failure, or do you think it's just an evolution? Bear in mind that in Norway, you've always been able to buy the car with the battery packs. You've always been able to buy electric Renaults with the battery packs, because Norway's electric car incentives involve a rule that says you have to get the battery as well. So you have to have the battery with the car, or it's something to do with price. I can't remember which. No, it's price. That's right. It has to be a certain price. And if you don't lease, if you leased the battery pack, it would make the Renault Zoe too low for the incentives, etc., etc. So they bundle the battery in as well to stump the price up, etc., etc. But do we think that this is sign, Faye, that battery leasing is failing? I mean, Paul said it'd be good for fleets, and I agree, but generally?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, I agree with Paul. You know, for fleets, it does make a lot of sense, and well, I think for personal customers as well, it does make sense as well. But I think consumers have wanted that option and would have questioned the lease. But at the same time, I think it's probably something that was always going to happen, as it's what Nissan offer, and Renault and Nissan, of course, are part of an alliance. So I think it was something that was always going to come.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Final couple of stories of the segment and the show today. This is a quickie. BMW i8 sold out in the UK for 1 whole year. That's pretty impressive headline, right, Paul?
It's a nice headline, but how many units?
You saw right through this, or you read the show notes. So BMW was talking to Auto Express this week, going, "Yep, we've sold out. We've delivered 200 cars. We've got order books of another 400, and you're not going to be able to get, if you've just ordered one today, you're not going to get it for another year." So that's 600 cars in a year. Sold out. Such a success, Paul.
Well, it's successful. I mean, you can engineer a success by keeping the number of units down to a very limited number. It remains to be seen. There are a lot of people out there willing to fork over a lot of money for supercars. Tesla just, if I had that kind of money, was going to buy a car with it, I certainly wouldn't consider anybody else beyond Tesla at this point. Certainly with their D.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, Faye, isn't it? I mean, but if you put it's nearly £100,000. That's the other thing. It's more expensive than a decent Tesla Model S. I think it's probably slightly cheaper than the D. P85D will probably work out to be. They haven't published the price yet in the UK. It will be around that same price. But the D will give you 200 and some odd miles. Excuse me. It will give you, really super fast acceleration, 3.2 second 0 to 60. I can imagine people who are buying the BMW i8 now getting a little bit ticked off. They've got to wait a year, and that's a long time in the EV world, isn't it, Faye?
It is, yeah. And I think really, BMW are training on the fact that they're an already well-known car brand, and that's possibly, the reason why that these people have gone for an i8 over something like a Model S. Is that they've maybe more familiar with BMW, but why anyone would want to wait a year, I don't know.
I mean, I have friends who bought a Fiat 500 when it first came out, and they waited 6 months. And the stupid thing was they waited 6 months, and I believe started to pay the finance package. They borrowed money from the car company and started paying before. Insane. But the other thing that is worth bearing in mind is that the BMW i8 is not being bought by people who want to be environmentally friendly. It's being bought by car collectors, people who are going to have these cars as a piece of art in their collection, something that they drive at the weekend occasionally. The Jeremy Clarksons of the world. I know, Paul. It's interesting to note. You were talking about auto dealers earlier on. If you look at the i8 launch party at Pebble Beach, there were 3 or 4 big dealer moguls there, weren't they? People who are heads of big corporate car companies, car dealerships.
Well, Pebble Beach does bring out the high end and the really rich. So I would understand that, but for me, we've got to look at what's going to work for the masses. And bringing out a supercar is great. It gives the brand a lot of cachet. But really, we've got some serious problems in the world that need to be dealt with. And, I'm looking for the OEMs to put out masses of EVs so we can get off of oil a lot faster. And that's where I'm putting my efforts. And, quite frankly, these guys with their supercars, they're just rich people who really don't care about the world. And I consequently don't care about them.
That's brilliant. Just as a recap for the battery rental, Dennis, thank you, Dennis, for saying that. Apparently the Smart for 2 is available with battery lease in the States. So thank you for that, Dennis, the Smart for 2 EV. All right, final 2 stories. Hamsters. I mean, Kia Soul EV. I don't know why my brain always goes to the hamsters. Those who know me will know why they go to the hamsters. I'm not going to say. But hamsters, the Kia Soul EV has been officially given its range by the EPA. 93 miles of range, Paul, for a brick at 105 mpge. That's pretty impressive, right?
It's very impressive. I more power to them. I've had several people come to me or call me and email me wanting to know where can I get one of these cars. And I had a few lunches with the Kia people a year or 2 ago when they were working on this, and they wanted to know what I thought. And so I gave them my best impression of what would sell, and I'm just very happy that they came out and they joined the EV party. I think it's a great car.
It's great.
I'm looking forward to driving one very soon.
Furries sell cars. What can I say? That should have been today's title. Furries sell cars. But I mean, seriously, I mean, it's a very efficient car. We talked about the ranges a couple of weeks ago on the show. We talked about the fact that Kia had said, look, round town, this car's going to get stupidly decent range because it's very efficient. On the motorway, it's just a brick. Aerodynamics of a brick. It's not going to go very far. Faye, it's coming to the UK, isn't it? Very limited production.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see the US figures because we all know that our figures tend to be quite wider than mark. But yeah, it's just strange to see how well it's going to do, considering it is possibly the worst shape that it could be for aerodynamic purposes. But if that's what Kia can do, then if they work a bit harder, it'll be interesting to see what they can do next in terms of if they produce an electric car from
The
scratch.
challenge is that Kia's not all that into EVs, and Hyundai is not all that into EVs, is it, Paul?
Well, they haven't yet, but I suspect that they're going to be, because they're kind of waiting at the margins to see the market develop, and the market hasn't developed as quickly as all of us would have hoped. So they're hedging their bets. They're not going to put a lot of money into it until they see a more robust market, which will come. Maybe you can confirm something for me, Nikki. I did read that the Kia Soul was CHAdeMO compatible.
It is.
Can you confirm?
Now, that's the interesting thing. They're talking about up to 100 kilowatts.
Nice.
Which is an extension of the existing standard. And this is the other thing. I think we should probably note this for Kia. Kia dealers are not putting in CHAdeMO charging stations. They're putting in dual head charging stations. And this has been confirmed in several different places. Yeah, Kia is putting in CCS and CHAdeMO charging stations in the US. Obviously, they're not putting in the AC ones because they don't have them over there, but they're putting in dual head charging stations at all of their dealers. And Kia's attitude seems to be, it's an EV, you can charge it. So we need someone to test it out and prove it. But that's really good attitude, isn't it, Paul?
It's a very good attitude. I applaud them for that, because they're opening their arms to their competitors to come in and charge. And not all the dealers here, even the Nissan dealers, I've heard some of them are pretty nasty if you come in with a different type of EV and want to charge. The car company I worked for, the dealership I worked for, was very open. We'd let anybody charge. But this is the first I've heard that they're putting dual heads at the Kia dealerships. I applaud them for that.
I'll need to do some more double checking to make sure it's not just a freak of a couple, but I think it is coming through for a couple, more than just a couple. I think it's going to be more than one. Final story of the week. South Park, Colorado. South Park in the UK, Faye. Do you watch South Park?
I've not seen it for a long time. I'm not even sure when it's broadcast anymore.
It's on Comedy Central.
Right.
It's basically, you watch South Park late at night after you've had a curry and you're a little bit drunk. Or in my case, after you've had a curry and a stressful day and you're prone to fainting, and you're a little bit, in bed going, I'm not really paying attention. This is just puerile childish humour, isn't it, Paul?
Well, it is. And somebody sent me the link the other night, and I eagerly watched it because I'm not a fan of South Park. It leads into Jon Stewart, so I do see a little bit of it usually at the end before the Jon Stewart show. But I watched this link, and I was a little bit disappointed. It wasn't that funny.
No.
So,
no. But it was Elon Musk. Elon Musk appearing
Elon Musk, yeah,
on South Park for the second time, I believe, in history, with his Model D. And that's the important thing. The Tesla Model D was made fun of in South Park, along with Elon Musk. Obviously, nobody's sacred in South Park. Along with Lyft, along with Zipcar, along with stereotypical Russian taxi drivers. It was. I mean, South Park basically goes over the line so far you forget where the line is. It will offend you. If you're someone who can easily be offended, you will be offended. If you can watch it knowing that it's going to be offensive, it sometimes backs around on itself. It's so offensive that it then becomes so childish and unoffensive. Does that make sense? It kind of loops back on itself. That, as you say, Paul, that episode wasn't all that great. It wasn't the best one I've ever seen. I think the best one I think I saw was when they went off on a game quest to find a games console, and it was all a bit weird. And it's lost its touch since the early days, that's for sure. But Elon Musk was in it, and this means, doesn't it, that that Tesla motors are now mainstream, doesn't it, Paul?
Well, yeah, one could say that. I don't think that show is going to affect Tesla's sales. Tesla's going to do quite fine without them, but more power to them if they made it. The show is a cultural icon here. A lot of people do pay attention to it, so it can't hurt.
Right, and that's a good thing. Faye, what do you think?
I'm surprised how scary he looks as a self-plot character.
He does look kind of pissed off and scary, but then I think that was kind of the idea. The idea being that Elon Musk says that transportation is the future, and South Park in their own way said, no, actually lift sharing is. I'm not going to go any further. As I say, if you do watch it, do so at your own risk, because you're probably going to get offended. But I mean, if you don't take it too seriously, it's right. But that is it for today's show. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul, and thank you, Faye, as well. Faye, where can people find out more about you?
They should go to thegreencardwebsite.co.uk.
Fantastic. Do you write anywhere else?
No, well, there is contracthomeandleasing.com as well. Basically, any really good domains websites I will write for, but those are the two focuses at the minute.
Yay! And Paul, where can people find out about you?
Generally, through Plug-in America, I can be found there, or you could just, I'm in the phone book, so you can actually call me.
Someone who's still in the phone book. There you go. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I apologise. I know some people, I've been watching the chat room for the first time in yonks because he finally got the chat room working again. And I know some people don't like the new set, which, if you don't know, is not real. But it beats what the studio normally looks like. And I've actually tweeted today 3 photos. One I did before the show when it was all just a load of boxes, before I put the lighting up. Then I tweeted a live shot with front back during the show, showing what I see when I look forward in the show and what everybody else sees. And then I think I'll probably do one after the show as well, so you can see the setup. But that will tell you why we use a virtual set. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Mixler. Hello, Mixler people. I'm looking at you up there on the Mixler, listening in your Tesla Model S's or whatever else you happen to listen to, streaming through the World Wide Web. And now I sound old because we haven't used World Wide Web since the 1990s. That's brilliant. I'm going to shut up now. We'll be back next week at the usual time of 6 p.m. British summertime. Yes, it still will be British summertime next week. And then the clocks all go crazy, but we'll sort that out. Thanks for joining us, folks. And as always, don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Take care. Bye.